Good day and welcome to another episode of Grassroots Vegan. Today I would like to talk about low-fat raw, 100% raw vegan versus raw until 4. Now, what they both have in common is they practice a high carbohydrate, low-fat diet that is predominantly fruits and vegetables. The difference is the raw till 4 allows cooked food, usually after 4 o'clock, into their diet. So they're eating mostly fruits and vegetables, but they're complementing it with high carbohydrate cooked meals, like a rice dish with maybe steamed vegetables, or some corn pasta with a sauce, or a vegan pizza. The low-fat raw vegan now, they do not endorse eating cooked food. Not all of them. There are plenty that are tolerant about it. But for themselves personally, they believe that they need to eat, in order to have the highest level of health and vitality, they need to eat 100% raw. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I do believe that, I know for myself personally, when I eat 100% raw of quality fruits and vegetables, I think that is an optimal way to eat. But that is not to undermine eating high carbohydrate, low fat cooked foods. I think there's definitely a place for that as well, and you can enjoy a healthy, vibrant life on that kind of a diet. Areas that I have contention with the 100% raw foodist is, you know, they will make arguments that are sort of evidence that eating 100% raw is like fact. And one of those arguments is that if you go to nature, nature is our teacher, correct? If you look in nature, you won't find an oven anywhere. So it's not natural to be cooking our food. We were never meant to do that. Okay, if you accept that argument and bring it to its logical conclusion, where nature is our teacher and we should listen to nature, we should follow how nature does things, then why are you living in a modern home? Why are you using computers? And by the way, those natural fruits and vegetables, which are not so natural after all, because they're grown and harvested on farms, come from, in many cases, from halfway around the world on airplanes. So how is that being, in tune with nature on how you eat? It's not. So I think I'm surprised that people who use that as an argument of truth for raw food don't see the flaw in that reasoning. So that's one point that I have contention with. I think to use that argument, it's weak, and it's just not valid. If you really wanted to learn from nature, if you honestly, don't be selective, okay? Don't just find a pretty waterfall, or you'll find some wild raspberries and just assume that nature is kind and wonderful and will provide abundantly. Nature, to live out in raw nature, is a dangerous place to be. If you are a herbivore, you're constantly alert that you have to be always aware that there might be a predator nearby and be prepared to run for your life. There's a lot of violence in nature. There's a lot of killing in nature. And that seems to be a part of the natural order of life itself. It's what actually supports life. The lion hunts down the weakest of a herd of zebras, and that's their dinner. And the herd becomes stronger because of that, because the weak ones are eliminated. But with humans, we don't do that with our weak. We look after our weak. We care for our weak. Look at Stephen Hawking's. If he were out in the wild, forget it, he wouldn't survive. But yet we're a different kind of creature than the other animals, even the apes and the monkeys. So that whole thing about looking to nature, you really want nature to be your guide, your true guide, then you better look at nature in its whole context, not just select a certain area and kind of fit it into your ideology. And then a lot of people who promote 100% raw will say, you know, once you've been eating raw for a long period of time, you just can't go back to eating cooked because you're going to feel awful. I disagree. I mean, okay, the longest I've gone 100% raw is 6 months. But when I did go back to cooked food, I didn't feel awful. I didn't feel diminished by it. If you're eating healthy, nutritionally rich cooked meals, high in carbohydrates, low in fat, it's not going to make you ill. That's in your mind. I mean, what's really working here is if you really feel awful eating a cooked meal after being raw for a while, it probably has more to do with guilt. And guilt is a powerful emotion. It can cause you to be ill. So I think that too is weak. And I know athletic people who eat cooked food all the time, not just at 4 o'clock, but 3 meals a day. They're quite athletic and they're very active. And for now, they seem to be quite healthy. So I don't know. These are statements that are made, but I just think they're flawed. And, you know, is it really healthier to eat 100% raw? Like, do we have scientific evidence proving that that's the case? I mean, the evidence that we have about health and longevity and people living to be 100 years old, disease-free, are people in these certain areas of the world, like Ecuador and in areas in Russia, where their diet consists predominantly plant-based, but they also do eat a little bit of meat and a little bit of dairy. And they cook. Their food is cooked. So we don't know if the 100% raw fruitarian lifestyle is actually on a long-term basis. We don't have the facts in yet. This sort of movement is still in its early stages. So, you know, even though you feel great, I feel great. I've been 3 weeks now, 100% raw. I feel wonderful. It doesn't mean that I'm more healthy necessarily than Harley or Freely who've decided to eat cooked food at 4 o'clock. Not a chance. In fact, I'd say they're far more athletic than I am. So, and then the other argument I've heard is, you know, look at the pets of owners who eat cooked food and what they've, you know, the pets themselves even suffer the same kind of diseases as their owners do, right? Like dogs and cats. And that's true. You get dogs and cats getting diabetes, getting heart disease, arthritis, all the same kind of dietary diseases that we experience in the Western world from a high-fat diet. And a lot of that has to do with what the pet is being fed. There's pet junk food as well as good quality food for your pets. And the cheaper stuff tends to be unhealthy for the animals. And so they develop these conditions later on in their life. But even then, domestic animals, pets, like cats and dogs, I'm pretty convinced that they live longer than the wild ones. I mean, I've seen wild dogs in Grenada many years ago, and they live a hard life, and I don't believe they live to be very old. So again, these are statements, and what's the point of even bringing up the animals is that this is evidence again that the cooked food is bad, that's going to create all these diseases. No, it's the kind of cooked food and what is put into a lot of the food, a lot of the processed foods, what's put into those. That's what's affecting people's health, is the high levels of fat and the chemicals and other things that they've added to these foods that are detrimental to our health. It's not necessarily a high carbohydrate, low fat cooked dinner that's unhealthy. And okay, so those are my beefs with the 100% raw. Although I promote it. I think if you can do 100% raw, that is great. There's many things to take into consideration. And again, I go back to this, money is one of them. It's an expensive way to eat. I mean, if you really want to get quality fruits and vegetables, you're going to have to pay more for it. And if that's what you're going to eat 100%, and if you have a family, you got to feed children on this as well. Whoa, your grocery bills are just going to skyrocket. And it just, it's not going to, it won't be feasible for many people. It'll be a hardship. It'll create unnecessary stress in their life. It'll make them miserable. So this is where the high carbohydrate, low fat cooked foods are very helpful, because rice is inexpensive. Beans and lentil are inexpensive. Peas, dried peas, all of these things are great alternatives. Potatoes, certain kinds of pastas, they're all good alternatives. And then if you include fruits and vegetables along with those, it can, you'll be eating, your family will be eating very healthy, a lot more healthy than most people. Now, the thing though I find, because I've done both raw till 4 and 100% raw, and right now I'm doing 100% raw. The thing I find with 100%, raw till 4 and eating cooked food as well, is that I mentioned this in my other video. I just find I gain a little bit more weight. I don't gain weight uncontrollably. I seem to plateau at a certain point, but it's excess weight that I don't want to carry, and that's why I've decided to go 100% raw. I'm doing running, and I'm trying to up my speed and create a better endurance for myself to improve my performance, basically. And in order to do that, I need to tone up a lot better than what I am. But so that, for me personally, that was an issue with eating cooked food. And the other thing is, you got to be careful if you're trying to maintain low fat, because there is a tendency I find and it's a very subtle tendency, where you start eating a little bit more richer foods, higher fat foods, maybe not all the time, but you'll find yourself, treating yourself to higher fat foods more than what you normally would. And so you got to know yourself and how far, what you can really handle. And I guess the other thing too is, I don't want, and this is another thing I found by eating cooked till 4, is that it becomes a habit, and which is not a bad thing, It's just, for me though, I don't want to be thinking about, what am I going to have for a cooked meal tonight, and that kind of becomes a mental preoccupation. I want to have the freedom to be able to eat cooked food when I choose to eat cooked food, rather than having that urge to want to eat it, and it's a habit because now there's like an alarm, 4 o'clock, bang, time to eat cooked food. So I'm eliminating that habit from my life, and where I'm heading is, I'm 100% raw most of the time, with the option to eat cooked food. Now, isn't that a great place to be? Isn't that freedom? So when I do eat cooked food, which I will in the future, I won't feel guilty. It's not going to be a big deal. And it won't be a habit. I won't need to repeat that again the next day. I can enjoy it in the moment and then go back to eating 100% raw. That's where my take on it all. Again, we're all individuals. Let's think for ourselves and find what works the best. That's all I got to say. Have a great day and fruit up, carb up.